Creatures of the night, blood-sucking demons, mythical beings, real-life beings, immortal, sensual. These are some of the descriptions of what I have read that described our topic tonight. Welcome to Julie's Realms, where I'll be talking about vampires. We often see vampires depicted in a few ways, from bloodthirsty creatures to ones that can transform into bat. They have super speed, they cannot go into the sunlight, they have no reflection, they sleep in coffins, some in graveyards and mausoleums. Then there's another side that is slightly less talked about. They are seen as protectors, sensual beings that are passionate lovers, that with one of their bites brings immense pleasure. When you hear the word vampire used, you'll always find a bunch of superstitions along with it. One of the accounts was during the plague. One of the side effects from the plague was mouth lesions that bled, which would give the illusion that someone had drank blood. The townsfolk would see it as a sign of vampirism. Researchers have also pointed to a blood disorder called porphyria, which can cause severe blisters on the skin when exposed to sunlight, and some symptoms can be temporarily relieved by ingesting blood. Back then, anyone with this condition would have been accused of being a vampire. Rabies was also another disease blamed as vampirism. When a person that was suspected to be a vampire had died, a stake was thrust into their heart, as well as their head was decapitated and their bodies burned. This kept going well into the 19th century. Now we've all heard and read about Dracula. There was another name that I did not know about, never read about or heard until I started doing some research. And her name was Mercy Brown, and this was in the 1800s from Exeter, Rhode Island. And I found this one on the website newengland.com. The story of accused vampire Mercy Brown in Rhode Island's brief tenure as the vampire capital of America was first published as The Words on Nellie's Tombstone, Yankee Magazine, January 1994. And this is the story. The villagers of Exeter, Rhode Island knew that Farmer George Brown had a problem. First, in 1883, his wife Mary Brown succumbed to a mysterious illness. 6 months later, his 20-year-old daughter Mary Brown also fell ill and died. Within the next several years, his 19-year-old daughter, Mercy Brown, was also dead, and George's teenage son, Edwin Brown, a healthy lad who worked as a store clerk, became suddenly frail and sick. The village doctor informed George that consumption was taking his family, but the county folk of Exeter had another explanation. On a chilly March afternoon in 1892, a group of men entered the Chestnut Hill Cemetery. They began to exhume the bodies of George Brown's wife and 2 daughters. They had concluded that one of the deceased was leaving the grave at night to suck the life out of its relatives. Only by killing the vampire could young Edwin be saved. First, the men examined the bodies of Mrs. Brown and daughter Mary. Finding them to be properly decomposed, they began to exhume Mercy Brown. Slowly, they shoveled into her grave. When they reached the corpse, they suddenly stepped back in terror. Mercy, who had been buried for more than 2 months, appeared oddly well preserved. It seemed that her hair and nails had grown, and when the men cautiously prodded the corpse with their shovel, they found that it was filled with fresh blood. Mercy's heart was removed and burned on a rock nearby. The ashes were added to young Edwin's medicine. Still, the boy died less than 2 months later. To the less superstitious, there was perhaps nothing so unusual about the well-preserved condition of Mercy's body. She had been in the ground during the 2 coldest months of the year. The mysterious wave of illness that swept George Brown's family was tuberculosis, but that did not keep Rhode Island from becoming known as the vampire capital of America. South County, whose isolated villages resembled the lonely hamlets of Transylvania, was a hotbed of vampire rumors between 1870 and 1900, when Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula in 1897, died. Newspaper accounts of vampire Mercy Brown were found in his files. The legends persist to this day in Rhode Island Historical Cemetery That was the story of Mercy Brown. Now, now there is another one, Vlad the Impaler. It is thought that Bram Stoker named Count Dracula after Vlad Dracul, who is also known as Vlad the Impaler. Vlad was born in Transylvania, Romania. He ruled Wallachia, Romania, off and on from 1456 to 1462. Some historians describe him as brutally cruel, a ruler who valiantly fought off the Ottoman Empire. He earned his nickname because his favorite way to kill his enemies was to impale them on a wooden stake. According to legend, Vlad Dracul enjoyed dining amidst his dying victims and dipping his bread in their blood. Whether those gory tales are true is unknown. Many people believe these stories sparked Stoker's imagination to create Count Dracula, who was also from Transylvania. But according to a Dracula expert, Elizabeth Miller, Stoker didn't base Count Dracula's life on Vlad. The similarities between the two are intriguing, though. In today's world, there are two kinds of vampires. One is called an energy vampire that just seems to just suck the life out of you. When you're around them, you lose your energy. You just feel drained and tired. And then there's the other ones that there's communities of self-identified vampires can be found on the internet and in cities and towns around the world. Most try to avoid rekindling the vampire superstition, and they keep to themselves and conduct their feeding rituals, which include drinking blood of willing donors in private. I have read that the self-identified vampires do not drink blood of unwilling people. They have to be willing. I do not know much about the self-identified vampires. I have not fully researched into their world. But vampires, it's a fascinating myth. It's one that I write my books about. Ever since I was a little girl, just like with werewolves, I was fascinated with vampires. And how I write mine are ones that can walk in daylight. There's romantic tendencies with them. They eat regular food and drink regular drinks, but you never know what's out there. Just like with all the unseens, we don't look. How do we know they're not out there? There are so many areas on the internet about vampires. I just wanted to do a little brief talk about vampires and some of the unknowns of them. Thank you for listening, and if you like what you are hearing, please like and subscribe to my channel. Next Sunday, I will be talking about the Fae, or as some know them as fairies, or the Sidhe. So until then, when you're out walking, or wherever you are, especially at night, keep your eyes open. You never know what's out there.